able to start adding participants to your grant, adding staff, and then setting up your activities and taking attendance. So that's what we'll cover today. I'll also, at the end, I'll talk about user accounts that Shanna, you mentioned sending them out, but in fact, the organizations have the ability to create user accounts for themselves and send them to their own users. So what Holiday is doing for them, they can do for themselves. And if we have time, I'll add that to the end of the training. So assuming you can all see my screen, I'm going to log in with our demo account. So here, again, this is the grant management system and not the RFA system. And so currently, when most of you are logging in, you're seeing something like this with this left menu. And most of you are OST grantees, so you're seeing roughly this, your OST grant and the staff module access. I'm going to go ahead and click into the OST grant. We'll use that for practice. And currently, you're landing on the grant agreement itself with all of the forms that you're responsible for filling out. And ideally, you're working toward this application sign-off where you're saying, I'm done, which then pushes the whole agreement to your grant manager. And when they sign off, it pushes it to the executive director. This one is in the state where it's already been pushed, but I've rejected it back. But the point is that until the grant manager approves, when you log in and click on your grant, this is all you're going to see. There are no left menus to add participants or start tracking your attendance. However, as soon as your grant manager approves, those left menus will become available to you. So here on a separate screen, real quick, I'm going to sign off on this one as the grant manager. You're not going to see that, but just imagine in the background, Shanna has gone in and signed off on your grant. And now once that's done, we'll click back in to the grant, and you'll see that the grant manager now has approved. We got this green button here. And as a result of that approval, these additional left menus become available to you for again, starting to manage your participants and attendance. So that's the trigger. This thing has to be approved, and then automatically the rest of it appears for you. So for those of you who are prior grantees, you're familiar with a lot of how this works, getting in and creating participant records, setting up services. But there are important changes starting in 23-24, really improvements to the whole architecture of this. And I'll try to explain that. It's a little bit complicated at times, but as best I can. In prior years when you were funded, in Learn 24, we created sites for you. You may be working at 5 different schools and 2 community locations, and you would have a list of those items, and you would click into each, you'd see them on a list, you click in each one and enter your participants and attendance there. And then sort of in the background, we were gathering that data together into reports for Learn 24 that tried to sort of get at what services were provided per grant. In the new architecture, it's different. Everything that you're going to be entering here is already organized around a single grant. So most of you have the OST grant. When you enter this data, it's all feeding directly into the reporting for your OST grant. Later in the year, if you get other grants, the same thing will happen, is that this environment will be focused on your grant. So everything you enter here, will be funneling into the reporting for that one grant. So there's a little bit of change here. So the next thing I want to show you then is how participants and staff are going to work in this new environment. So when you finally get access to this and hit participants and staff, your list is going to be empty. And I have one demo in here, but essentially you're going to start with an empty roster. And your job will be to add all of the youth that you intend to serve under this particular grant to this list. And there's 2 ways to do that. Well, there are 2 kind of scenarios for that. In either way, you're going to hit this. You're going to have an empty list. You're going to hit this add button. And what we've done in the background is to connect this environment to your prior sites. So the idea is that if you've registered someone in the past to a site, those records are connected to this environment. So what it means is that if you enter a first name, last name, and date of birth for anyone that you've previously registered and done the data entry work, the system's going to find that record and allow you to just bring it into this environment without having to rekey any of that data. So the idea is that if you've already registered participants in the past, you will not have to re-enter any of their information to roster this grant. You're going to grab that record from the past and bring it in here. And I'm going to show you that real quick through the demo. So this is the name of an individual that I know for the demo organization was registered to one of their sites in 22-23. And simply by entering that individual's first name, last name, and date of birth, it's not case sensitive, and hitting search, the system's going to say, hey, you've already registered Susan Adams sometime earlier. We found that person based on the matching name and date of birth. All you need to do to bring that person in is to hit register. And by doing that, it's going to take you to the form, and you see all of the prior information that you may have entered on this youth is already here. You don't have to rekey any of it. And this record is ready for you to finish out and continue adding new people. So now that I've added this person, when I come back to my participant and staff lift, you can see that record's here. So I'll go ahead and add another one. Just so this is just again, just some, again, for those of you who have already been serving youth in Learn 24, this is what you'll do to bring in your historic people. And I must have misspelled that wrong.
Mark, while you're correcting the spelling, another question: do they need to know the date of the birth of the student in order to pull it over, or can they just search by name?
They need to know currently you have to have the date of birth, because that's a more complete. Otherwise, we'd bring in like students who have matching first and last names. That is we can change the behavior to not require the date of birth, but currently it is required, so we can do a complete match. Yeah. So this is an example. So let me then demo this. So actually, I'm entering a person here with a name and date of birth that is not being found in the historic records. And when I do that, rather than see that person's name with the register button, I'm going to get a link that says no matching records found. Click here to add new person. And so this indicates that this is the first time you'll be serving this individual with this name and date of birth. And you just click this record, and it'll then move to the add youth sequence. So this is the sequence for adding someone again. And here you are required to enter this additional information to complete the registration. And Shanna, please feel free to comment here if you want. So
yeah, no, we definitely are asking folks to fill out all of these components. So even if you pull over a student from a previous year, we're asking you to enter this information because, as mentioned in our initial training, we are working with DCPS and OSSE to pull all of the demographic, academic, school attendance, disciplinary data, et cetera, on each individual student. And as long as you identify that they have completed the FERPA consent and attached that waiver, you will also have access to that information. Completely optional, you do not have to do that additional step. We want it so that we can assess who we're serving and how, any impact that it may have on school attendance, et cetera. So we are asking you to fill out this information that you see here.
So this is so this is the minimum data needed to actually add the youth to your system. So I'll go ahead and hit add here, which is then going to bring up the full record. So it's sort of a two-stage thing. There's minimum data needed to add the record, but then there are other things on this record that are required that may take some more time to collect. For example, and those things are all highlighted with the red asterisk, the additional required fields. So for example, their SAYO consent, maybe you didn't have that at the time that you needed to add them to the system, but now you're able to go back and indicate, yes, now I have the SAYO consent. And as well, at the time that you registered the youth, if you didn't know their school information, you have a chance here to enter that. We've given you a drop down of all the school names, so you don't have to type in school names anymore. You can just use the drop down, enter their grade. And so there's a few more required pieces of information after you've added the record, and I'm filling them in here. Basically, it's the SAYO consent, their school information, and lastly, their FERPA release. And Shanna, if you want to cover these topics a bit, I know we did last time, but I want to remind everyone how this is working.
Just again, FERPA it's a family's education right to privacy. We cannot share the data with you without having that FERPA consent signed. And we went back and forth with the attorneys. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for you all, but really it does require not just that check mark, but also that you upload that signed consent for us to be able to share. Then you will see drop down at the bottom all of the disciplinary, the school attendance, their academic outcomes, all of that additional information, whether they have they are a student with a disability or they are English learner, their home, like all of that information will be populated at the end of this youth profile from our information automatically into Cityspan from DCPS and OSSI systems. We will see it, but we will not see it. You will not see it if you do not have it. You have to always check whether you have the consent on file or not, but you have to also upload it if you want to be able to see it. And you can do that on a case-by-case basis for students that you need to provide more individualized and additional support for. You can do it for all your youth, or you can do it for none of your youth. It's really up to you. But you just need to tell us whether you have the FERPA consent on file or not. And if you want to see the student's information, you will also upload that FERPA waiver to their file.
Shana, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you upload the FERPA copy after the child or the student has been registered? So say you've already registered them into Cityspan, but at the time you didn't have the copy to upload. Can you then go back and then make a copy to upload it to Cityspan?
Yes, great question, Lamont. Absolutely. You can go back and update, as Mark was saying, this information as you have it. And as you get that FERPA, you wouldn't have any of that access to that data prior to uploading it. But I believe it will be a nightly update or a very, very often update to the system. So as soon as that's added, you will be able to then go in and see maybe the next day or within 20 to 48 hours, you should be able to see that use information.
Shanna, just one quick point. There are a number of questions in the chat, and it would just be great if you guys at some point addressed our questions or concerns. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw all the great questions, and I was going to let Mark get to a stopping point as it related to adding youth, and then we'll go through those questions before moving on to the next section.
Okay, well, we're pretty close to that stopping point,
Yep.
but I'll just point out that there's always this save button on the left. So if you just save your data, you're here in this, we've reduced the size of this form to just have the essential information. So it should be quicker to fill out. And once everything's in, there's a new step that we want to have you do this year, which is to actually submit the form. In the past, we didn't know when you were done with the form, and therefore a lot of forms were left with incomplete data. But now when you're done, you'll be able to submit. If you have incomplete required fields, when you go to submit, it'll say, please finish filling this out. But assuming everything's in, you'll be able to hit the submit button, which will then turn this into a read-only field, indicating that it's all submitted. At any time, you will be able to unlock it, edit it, and resubmit it. But the key to the submit is that then when you go to your participants and staff list, you'll see in your list which of these individuals have completed forms and which are still in progress. So you'll want to look here and basically make sure that eventually all of these are in a submitted state. That's your way of knowing that everything is in place. But it's easy, submitting's easy and unsubmitting to edit, it's very simple, but that's a new concept here. But what it means is that when we go to report on your youth, Because of the need for absolute data integrity, we're only going to be reporting on the youth that are in a submitted state. So if you, for some reason, haven't collected enough data, they will remain unsubmitted, and that's the incentive for you to finish your data collection, is to know that only those that are submitted are going to be in the reporting environment.
That will impact your attendance before, as we go over there, because you will only be able to take correct mark attendance on those that are fully enrolled or submitted.
That's correct. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and submit these down real quick. So yeah, I want to use these for the just to demonstrate enrollment. So I'll just go ahead and submit all three. It's very quick, and now you can see everybody in my list is submitted and ready to be enrolled and marked as attending. So Jenna, we'll pause here and take the questions. Is that good?
Yeah, definitely. So to the first point that was asking, when you were searching previous year students, I do think if it is possible, if we can remove the requirement for the birth date, that if they're only pulling students that have been in their program, we shouldn't run into a lot of duplication of names. However, and Mark, this is a question to you. If they do have two Stacy Adams, I assume they will both pull up, and then they will be able to dig into that student's profile to find out, oh, this one's 8 and this one's 16. We need the 16-year-old or whatever. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, we would then return all the matches based on the name by itself.
Okay.
And we'll show the date of birth in the result lister, so you'll know right away which one you're actually trying to bring in. So that's a modification we can make. Yep.
I think that would be great. It sounds like that the grantees would prefer that. There was also a question. I know in the past that they've been able to upload it using a CSV or Excel file. Is that still an option?
It's not available currently in the new design, but it is something that it will be available. And in fact, if people need it right away, we could. The problem with the upload is having to reconcile it with the old records, but you can see here with the participant upload ID, we are making available a feature that if you can give us records with an ID that matches whatever you enter here, we'll be able to upload and update these records. And if you give us participant IDs that are new, we'll be creating new records for you. So short answer is yes, we will be supporting uploads, but the mechanisms are not yet in place to be uploading for the new year. So. And Shannon, we could talk about the timetable for that. If we have grantees that are ready with files. Again, the part of it is that we're gonna create an upload template that matches the new form design here. And so whatever you're planning on giving us will need to have, the data formatted properly according to these new fields. So.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Yes, we'll follow back up on that. A similar question around pulling students from previous participants. Is there the possibility to pull multiple participants at a time, or it really needs to be entered one name at a time?
It needs to be one name at a time. Yeah, but it'll go fast. I mean, I think you could roster in 100 or so students within 20 minutes. It's just name, search, click, name, search, click, and you'll be bringing. It won't take very long to bring them in. So.
Okay, great. I'm looking through the questions here to see. As I continue to look, there was a question, we haven't got to SAYO yet, but from Woodlands Tigers, Patricia, if you want to come off mute, I'm not sure I understand your question around, will the names appear from other grant opportunities? No, it will only be for those from Learn 24. If you are a previous grantee and you have students in your system that are continuing with you, they will, from 3rd grade to 4th grade, you can pull them up and then just update their information as needed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. SAYO consent. There was a question about that, and I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in that we haven't gone over SAYO yet, except that we did mention it an orientation. I forget the exact acronym, but it's basically your youth survey. So it is a requirement of the grantees that you survey, and this is that qualitative assessment of how youth are perceiving your program. So there are pre and post surveys required. And the administration of SAYO is done through Cityspan, and we're going to touch on that today with more coming in future trainings. But in order to administer SAYO, again, you have to have consent from the parents. And in the orientation, if you want to go back to the recording that was provided and or the grantee guidebook, we have provided the language, the template language for FERPA, which is the privacy consent, as well as SAYO consent. Template language that we ask you to put in your enrollment forms. And that way the parents are able to read that and provide consent. And then when you're doing the registration of students, you can then just click, yes, we have that on file. Yes, we have that on file. Continuing to look through these questions here and see if there's anything, and feel free to come off mute and ask your question as it relates to youth participants if I have not already answered it.
Just a quick kind of follow-up with regards to the data entry. As I understand it, there's once we find these students online at this Cityspan, there's a tremendous amount of data that we have to enter that we previously did not have to enter. And I'm trying to figure out why that is, whether it's for legal purposes. I guess, you know, there's the question of how we're going to get that data, and presumably we'll get that data from the schools that we're working with. But there's the question of why we have so much more data to enter per student. And if, you know, our hands are tied and we have to do this legally, then I understand, I suppose. But I'm just mystified by the fact that as much as things may have been streamlined, we're now asked to do a lot more data entry for each student.
Thank you, Paul. I think you're voicing a question that I see in the chat. So thank you for raising that. It does not appear to me that we're asking a lot, and I've managed many out of school time grants across school districts. And so for me, this is what should be included in your enrollment form: a child's first name, last name, the school they attend, their address, their birthday, and their grade. That information is you should have on your enrollment form. Everything else that we will then be providing back to you from the school district is a lot of information, but you're not required to obtain that information. This is basic demographic information, and the reason it is needed, so that you understand why we're asking it or requiring it, is that it is necessary in order for the schools to then identify the LEA student ID to be able to provide the academic data, the demographic data, the disciplinary, the school attendance, all of those things that we want to be able to track to see, one, are we serving the targeted students that we said that we would be serving? And two, are we having any impact on things such as discipline, school attendance, et cetera? So that the schools, OSSI and DCPS require the information that we are requesting from the grantees in order to be able to connect it to the student and provide the additional data back to us. But again, it's very basic demographic information that we are asking. Does it not feel that way?
I actually, the truncated list that you just listed sounds more reasonable to me. That I guess I was under the mistaken assumption that there were a lot of starred items, as I think it was Mark who was going through the explanation, and it struck me that it was a lot more than we previously had to add. But if it's, you know, if it's basic things like their date of birth, their grade, I guess their age, you said, obviously their name, and their school, and that's essentially it. I think it's doable. It's just, the point is, I just much more than we previously had to do. That's all.
It is. We had those formulas on there, or I'm sorry, those not formulas, those questions on there before, but we weren't requiring it. But then we're not able to obtain the data. There are, in addition to, and you can see it on your screen, is school name, address, the ward. And I just talked to Mark. We might put a little link on there for a ward locator. If someone doesn't know where that ward is, it's typically going to be, perhaps the ward you're serving in, but you could be across ward. So we can put a link there for a ward locator. The school name, the grade level, the things that are new there, the type of school, and that's just charter or public, because that is based upon whether this request goes to OSSI or goes to DCPS. Or private, because they pull different data for us, so that's why that's required. So as you put the school, you're just indicating whether it's a DCPS school or a charter school or a private school, and then the FERPA release and SAYO. Those are the additional pieces. The gender, ethnicity, and race. Those are ones that we are requiring again. That helps OSSI and DCPS to identify the correct student. However, I think that we can make those unrequired and optional. I have to go back and ask them. I think we went back and forth on whether that was required or not. That's one we could update, where that information could come from them once they confirm who the student is, to help alleviate some of what is having to be included on your end outside of the student name, address, birth date, and school information.
Yeah, because I think this conversation is really helpful. It's because, to the extent that, a lot of us, I think, are concerned about how much data entry we have to do. And it sounds like, first of all, you guys are flexible about this, which is good. And secondly, it sounds like the schools themselves can provide a lot of this data that we may not be aware of. And so, to the extent that you can minimize the data entry we have to do for things like gender, ethnicity, and race, which the schools are much more likely to know. What's worth keeping in mind is that the program staff for a lot of our organizations, I imagine, the program staff are different from the data entry staff. So the program staff may be aware of the gender, the race, and ethnicity of these kids, but the data entry staff don't. And so it's just, the less we have to enter, the better for our in this already relatively burdensome kind of process for maintaining our grant funding. So.
Yeah, I definitely hear you, Paul. I'm going to double back on that. And as long as I think that that may be one that we can update there, that we will receive that information from the schools, as you said, versus requiring that of your data admin. Thank you for raising that.
Hi, this is Katrina with Beacon House. Yes. I'm going to actually give more detail about my question. So I'd already been speaking with Mark. We actually have already began entering our current students in our system because we've already been in programming. So we were a little shocked when we were trying to get our student information over to now this particular side of the platform. What I'm hearing, though, is that we will have to individually add each one. And I'm asking, is there any way to either manipulate the system around that, only because we're talking about over 250 students that we've already entered. And I created the program for them, and it's already in there for 2023, 2024. I'm sorry, yes, 2023, 2024 school year. And now it sounds like I have to have that step happen again, but I'm having to do it one by one, where we already have them in the system. Just they're technically under a different tab.
So you entered them. I'm not understanding where you would have entered them. Mark, do you understand?
Well, they have us. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, did you want me to say where I've entered them?
Yeah,
yes,
I think I'm going to say the same thing, but go ahead.
Okay, so for the example that we're going through right now, we've now created the 2023-2024 because it's under that particular grant funding. This was prior to this process being started because our programming started back the 6th of September, we had already put in our students so that we could create attendance and all that because program had started. So in our particular account, you would see that I have a 2023-2024 school year already in there, having nothing to do with this now grant because everything is not there, if that makes any sense. So like we were shocked, we had gone in and we noticed we had no students enrolled, but it's because they're not showing up on this side.
That's unfortunately just the timing of rolling out these grants versus when your year really starts. Shanna, there are things we can do for agencies like this. I mean, it's a little bit of manual coordination, but if we know which of the sites they were using, because a lot of organizations have multiple sites, so if we know which one maps to the new FY 23-24 grant, on the back end, potentially we could bulk assign them to the new grant. But if you want to support that, just be kind of coordinating with individual agencies to get that done. So.
Yeah, and so if I understand correctly, was it uploaded in a previous year? Those participants were uploaded to a previous year?
Yep, and I'll demonstrate that. So for in the
Okay.
grantees view, they have this drop down where if they were funded in prior years, they may see any number of years here. So this is 22-23. So going back to this list, these are the historic sites or the 22-23 sites where clicking in here, it is last year's environment where you can register your youth and enter your programs. And my point was that, the lookup in the new year is searching for these records and bringing them forward. It is possible, like I said, if we need to sort of manually connect sites and bulk bring these forward. I think it would save the grantees, maybe an hour or two of time to have to do that manually. But it would,
Okay.
it definitely would be an extra administrative task for everyone to coordinate that.
So I'm putting the Learn24 data email in the chat again, where if you can email, if you're an individual site who has done that and you need us to kind of work individually with you to pull that forward, if you already uploaded this.
You went on mute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think I hit my mute by accident, but we're back. So.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so what I was saying is that just email us your name and organization so we can work individually with you to try to pull over this year's participants that were entered in a previous year on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
I appreciate it. It would be great because it just, like I said, we had already began putting them in, and then we were going into like update and by adding forms, and we noticed that none of the students were there, and we thought that we would just drop them into this current year, but that wasn't an option. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so that goes for anyone that may have done that. Paul, I see you all did that too. So we'll work with you individually to get that taken care of. And we're also going to look at the CSV upload as soon as possible. We'll work with Cityspan to get that as an option so that you can just enter, or maybe pull it if you have an electronic application process that you can just download that CSV, make sure it's in the right format, and then upload it and not have to enter one by one. There was another question around. Oh, I know there was a question about if you have FERPA consent, is that only allowing you to see SAYO? No, that's going to allow you to see, you should receive the anonymous SAYO results, a report, not individual survey results because it is anonymous, but an aggregated report of what your youth stated in their survey. However, with FERPA consent, you will also be able to see, like I said, whether they are EL, whether they're a student with disabilities, whether they how they're doing academically, are they attending school, their their disciplinary records, etc. Not the detailed records, but coding for that. So you will be able to individualize your support for those youth. And that's what that FERPA waiver uploaded will allow. And that's all in process. It's not going to be day one. We're working where the agreements have been signed with OSSI and DCBS, and we're working with Cityspan to get that automated. But we'll have that in place this fall. And I know this is a lot of information. I do want to push ahead because we're at 2:45 for Mark to go through the next components of this training, and we are going to have a follow-up. So, and please know you can always reach out to Learn24 Data at dc.gov as well as your grant management specialist, and we will help walk through these processes and support you as much as we can individually.
I did have a question in the chat that I think got skipped. Is there a deadline
Oh, yes, please.
for SAYO and FERPA consent? Is there a deadline by which we have to have those indicated?
Well, you want to get, they're supposed to be on the enrollment form, right? So if you have a child enrolled, you should have whether that waiver is there. And as part of the grant agreement, that is required as a part of the enrollment form. Although if you're new, you wouldn't have a grant agreement in place. And so that would be new information to you. So there is some flexibility there. We do ask that you get that as soon as possible. You cannot administer a SAYO prior to having SAYO consent. And
right, we have our previous year's ones, but you're saying it needs to be a fresh one at the start of a new grant agreement.
Yes, with each year, a parent has the opportunity to select or opt in or opt out of that. And so you would want to have that new. And SAYO, its pre-surveys are supposed to be done within the first 6 weeks. I think we provided a kind of an internal deadline of December 1 because we know people are starting at different points, but that's kind of our check on, looping back with you all and seeing where you are, making sure that first pre-survey is done. So you just want to get that consent in place before administering the SAYO survey. And of course, you would have to have the FERPA consent on file before any data is shared.
Sorry, I had a question as well. My hand was raised, but I just wanted to just touch base about two things. So does the parent have the opportunity to refuse the FERPA?
Absolutely.
Okay, so and if they do, then we would just put no and then continue to save them in. And then the next question is the grant year began 10/1, right? So we're
Correct.
getting this database training now, and some of us are still waiting on approval for our COI. So when can we actually start putting people in and like start doing this process that we're being walked through right now? Because we won't have access until that's approved, correct?
Great question. We are, as soon as you ratify the grant agreement, you will have access. You don't have, because we're waiting on the COI approval, we did not want to hold up this process. So as long as you have reviewed, updated your grant agreement and signed, and this was just decided today. So if it hasn't rolled over for you, this just happened in a meeting right before this meeting with Mark to confirm that as soon as you all have ratified the agreement on your end, that you will be able to start adding youth. We just need to be able, you have to assign them to a site. So we want to make sure that you have reviewed, updated as needed your sites and confirm that. So then you will have access to entering your youth and can assign them to the sites appropriately.
Thank you.
Of course.
Shanna, I also have a question just to clarify. So on where you were saying this participant part where we're going to be selecting the sharing information, where would that data show? Is it going to show under participants?
Yep.
And is it going to be in real time so we know like if so if you're saying that we don't have to enter like the EEL, the ELL, or that type of at-risk determination, and DCPS is going to share that with us, if that displays here, when is that going to display so we know how we're meeting our numbers that's required?
So it should be, and granted, as I said, it's still in process. It's being worked out between, the data system, the data folks at DCPS and OSSI and Cityspan. But the way we envision it is that it will be a nightly upload. So that data will always be a very current, very live, very fluid data that you will see. We will run reports quarterly. so that we're able to, have the aggregate information to report out to our stakeholders. But the individualized student information, the vision is that it would be those systems, those data systems will speak to each other, and that there would be a nightly upload. So very live.
But you're saying it's going to be here under the participants or
Yes,
under reports?
Yes. So it will be here. Yeah. So you will scroll down under school information, demographics. Then you would see academics, attendance, disciplinary. All of that information will populate on this screen per student.
Shannon,
okay. And then I had one
might also
other
add
question.
a tab here. Yeah, go ahead.
One other question. I don't know if you're getting into this later, but like under sites, is that something that SAYO, that you guys are uploading our sites, or is there some way for us to do it? Because when I look on our account, it doesn't show all of our sites.
I think that is rolling over as soon as you sign, and that's what I was saying. We just had that conversation, so you may not see it yet, but as soon as you sign the agreement, that should populate from your application that you then reviewed and approved for your grant agreement, and then it will populate your sites. All of the information that you entered in there, the scheduling, etc., you will not have to re-enter. Is that correct, Mark?
Well, yes and no. So to even see this left menu, it means that the grant manager currently has approved your grant agreement. Is that true? I mean, to be seeing any of this.
Yeah, currently the way it was set up was that it had to be approved by the grant manager, but we're changing that as long as they have ratified, as long as they have signed, they should be able to see this information. Is that correct, Mark, or am I?
We can update it to that, but currently, so that's the next piece of the training, which is the sites left menu and how that's different now. I can just fast forward to that if we're done with the other questions.
Yeah, if you want to do that. And I would say I do believe that this particular grantee has their agreement was one of the first ones to be executed. And so she should be able to see the site information.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like she can. And it sounds like the list of sites, though, isn't what she's expecting. And so I want to talk about that. So in your grant agreement, you had the sites form where you would have added as many sites as are going to be served by the grant. At the point at which the grant agreement is approved and you get access to these left menus, we're going to take the site names from this form. In this case, there's 3 of them in this sample, and then provision them under the site's menu. So in sum, whatever you've put into your agreement as the site names are what you should be seeing here. And
that's what I'm saying. That's not what I'm seeing. What I see on a grant agreement site is not what's the sites that's populating under program site. But I guess I can email you offline, Shannon, for that.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that.
That's what we'll. And it's a rollout with any new system. I just want to always remind us, like, that we're going to continue to run into those until we get them all corrected, little bugs in the system. So anyone who runs into something that this is not what I see, send us an email, learn24data@dc.gov, so our data team can work with Cityspan. Cityspan is very responsive, looks into each thing immediately, and then we can correct any bugs that are out there, because that there may just be one little click that needs to happen to make sure that's populated correctly. So thank you for bringing it up.
But that is the design. Whatever you put in your grant agreement should be what you see here.
Yeah, Mark, just to follow up with what Shannon said, if you have any Cityspan, any challenges or any issues, just send an email to Learn24Data, and we will follow up with Cityspan. We are the POC, so we will do everything just to ensure that you have a smooth transition in anything you have to do. Thank you, Shannon.
Olade.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, Mark, over to you. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but this is one of the important changes for this year, which is that in the past where you just had sites not associated directly with the grant, now, whatever sites you're going to be keying data into are going to show up here. And again, before, when you registered your youth, you registered them to a site. And if you had multiple sites, registering them to one site wouldn't register them to the other. And maybe that wasn't necessary because they weren't being served by 2 sites. But in this new design, again, you're registering the youth once to the grant, and then they become available as participants at any of your sites. So the workflow is to then select the site that you want to start creating activities and attendance for, like I just did, and then the environment that you're used to is here for adding activities. And Shannon, I don't know how we want to use the last 5 minutes, but I could quickly run through adding a program, an activity.
Sure, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so here again, these lists are going to be empty, but it's just a matter of clicking add at the top and entering the name of the activity that you want to create. And you have options. You can create just one activity called general attendance and put all your youth into that. But you can also create separate activities if you want to subdivide your activities. I'm just going to create that one general container. And the same thing here, we've indicated things that are required. This form is much shorter than what you've seen in prior years. There are things that are required, but it's a third of what we were previously collecting about activities, because with that, pretty much here, I'm done filling out this form, and I can go ahead and proceed with that activity. And you can see now it's here, general attendance. And then again, for those of you who've done this before, it's just a matter of clicking on it and scheduling it. I'll just create a quick schedule here, schedule act dates. I'll add a multiple date schedule. It's going to start, say, this month and run through the end of the year. And it's going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm just going to enter the times and hours real quick. So with that quick setup here, I'm able to schedule my activity out. And then once that's done, you can go ahead and start enrolling your youth. And so I'll hit enroll here, and just the show all will bring through. And again, this is where we want these people to be in a submitted state so that they can be enrolled. And I'm just going to enroll all 3 of these individuals into my activity. It's asking to confirm the start date. If any of them were starting later, you'd want to change their enroll date, but I'll accept that default. It's confirmed. And now I have an activity with all the necessary data. I've got my schedule set up. I've got 3 individuals enrolled, and I can then go on to attendance. And it's only showing what's empty through today. If I went all dates, I'd see all my dates, but just say today I want to take attendance. And I'm just going to mark these 3 people present. And that is the full workflow for setting up the activity and getting all the way to daily attendance. Hopefully that's quick and simple, but that's the goal, is to try to minimize the work and the clicks to get to this point. So, Shannon, I'm going to stop there for you to wrap up. So.
Yeah, I was just trying to review the chat. I know we have lots of questions, so let me say that we will plan a follow-up where we can revisit Cityspan. I have just provided in the link and the chat the link to the initial Cityspan training. If you're still in the grant agreement process, there was a question about, can I update my sites? That is done at the grant agreement approval. You review, you're able to update the sites before approving the grant agreement, and that's what will carry over into the site information. And then that training that I dropped into the chat is also where we went over the entering of staff and background clearances. We will also provide the recording out through email. And again, if you go to the Learn24 website on the grantees page, those trainings are also listed along with the grantee guidebook. So those are just good reference points if you want to pull up the video and fast forward to the point that you need, to hear it again. We will have today's training posted there as well. We are going to have another meeting just because it's so much information to really go into SAYO administration in detail, but we can revisit at that time entering youth and attendance after you've had a chance to kind of try this out. You've got your grant ratified and you're able to add the youth, and then we can revisit it. As with anything, when we're rolling out these new expectations, there is going to be flexibility. We create internal deadlines to keep us on track, to help support you and keeping you on track, but we'll always be flexible and there to support you through this process and being sure that you are successful. Don't feel, like, oh my gosh, this is too much. It is a lot of information. to adhere to, but I think once you start trying it out, you'll realize that the system is much easier and you have a lot more information in a much user-friendly system. So that is the goal. Always be, feel free to provide us feedback in regards to that and where you think there could be continuous improvement, because that is our goal. We want to make this easier for you. We want the data to be user friendly for you and for your own reporting processes. If you are also a 21st century grantee or you have other funding streams, you often have to report a lot of more information. And so we have built in options for you to provide, to break down your attendance by activity if you want. So if you need to report on a STEM grant, or if you need to report out how many hours you're doing in academic, for example, you can build that in, and we can go into more detail on how to do that versus just taking general attendance. But we really want this system to be one that you can use it as minimally as required by our grant, and even more so to obtain, like we said, really individualized data on students and details on your program to really help streamline your reporting process to your public, to other grantees, and in general to your families and your staff. So we will continue to meet with you, and our grant management specialists and our data analysis team are here to be on the phone to walk through the process with you to make sure that you are comfortable and understand what you're doing. So know that we are your partners through this process. And we are over. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I know it's a lot of information. We will provide the recording so that you can go back or share it with other staff members. And we will be following up with another meeting soon that will just allow us to kind of come back and revisit everything we've gone over so far, as well as going into detail on administration of the SAYO survey, so that you have the opportunity to play around and then come back with questions. I do see, I'm not able to see who has their hand raised there. It looks like a couple. Commissioner Crump, did you get your question answered, or do you have another question?
No, sorry, you can go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. Jamila, College Track.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the information that you have shared today. I just had a question, two questions actually. One about the enrollment form. Is that something that Learn24 provides? Because like for College Track, our students that are already on our roster do not complete another like enrollment form every year. So like an enrollment form, I guess in College Track sense, would be like their original application into the program. So for some students, that's like 1 to 3 years ago. So I'm trying to figure out the enrollment form piece.
So let me answer that one real quick. We do not we do not provide a template enrollment form, and we do not dictate like how often you do that. What is necessary is the FERPA and SAYO consent annually, and so those we do provide the template for in the grantees guidebook. And Mark Weinberger, if you don't mind grabbing the link to that and dropping it in the chat, but again, it's on the Learn24 website. That language is in there, and you can just do a one-pager that you send home with your parents annually for your students to get those consents.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question was about attendance recording. Is attendance recording required for every programming session that occurs, or is it something that can be like quarterly uploaded? Like, what is the expectation around attendance recording?
We ask that attendance is entered weekly. And so, yeah.
Okay.
And it is up to you how detailed, if you want attendance by sessions, if you have, mentoring versus a guest speaker, for example, at your program, and you have different students participating in different events and you want that broken down, you can build up attendance like that, or you can just do a general attendance for the day.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep, of course. Next question, David. And if anyone needs to drop off, please do, including Mark. If you need to go, I will do my best to answer the questions or reach out to you if you need to jump off. But our next question is from David.
Thank you. I was just trying to understand the way that the attendance data is actually being collected. We're currently operating at one site, but maybe moving to be operating at a second site sometimes as well, just depending on the needs to be transporting students. As we're doing that, is the attendance sort of compiled in one place and then broken down by site now? Am I understanding that correctly? Or does this create a sort of challenge? I guess what happens if we have to move some students between sites during the program? Are they still all the attendance being collected under their core name, and then sites being a secondary source of information? I'm just trying to understand those categories.
Mark, I'm going to let you take the first stab at that because I think you may be able to explain it better.
The design is that you would need to set up separate activities at the two sites. However, if you enroll the same individual at two sites, yes, their attendance is being collected under their name so that the attendee is not duplicated. And we, if that answers it, but you would need to create the activities at two places, yeah.
So basically, even if we had a student who went back and forth between the two places on different dates, they would be compiled over time into the student's total attendance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the benefits of the new design is that we have an unduplicated youth record that's then, linked to many different sites. So.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate that architecture.
You're welcome.
Thank you, David. Next question is Caroline.
Yes, hi. I was wondering if we've had an issue with the old Cityspan instance where we have two sites and the participant lists we had the same youth going to both sites. We weren't able to sort of share sites for each participant. Is that being fixed in this one?
Yeah, that's one of the core changes in the new model is that the same participant can be assigned to any of the sites that you're working at. I don't know if that answers it, but.
Perfect, yes, thank you.
Yay, I love when there's positive changes confirmed. Ronnie.
Yes, thanks. I think you already answered this, but like right now, we only can see like 5 tabs, but once our grant agreement is approved, I'll see the rest of these tabs, all 11 or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're updating it so that it's as soon as you sign it, you'll be able to see it. Right now, it's got to be fully executed, but we will be making the update that as soon as you have approved and signed off, that you should be able to see the other tabs and start filling out participants, et cetera.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Crump, do you have another question?
Yes. So just to clarify, so if we have a site, because I know there's a weekly attendance rate that we said that everybody said that they were going to have, but I know specifically with high school students, let's say we have different activities that we're doing. We're offering programming 3 or 4 times a week at this one site, but there might be certain students who only supposed to come 1 time a week because that's what they want to do. So when we enroll them in a site, is there a space to enroll them in certain activities? For instance, like I might have a student who's just doing art and entrepreneurship, but not coming on Wednesdays to do financial literacy. Are they then counted as absent for that day? Or is there a way for them to be enrolled in a specific activity at the site?
Great question. So this is why I was attempting to clarify, and I'm glad you asked a following question because obviously I didn't clarify it well enough. But Mark, if you can do an example here, you could see that there's general attendance that he has entered, and you could just go in and take general attendance. But you could see that he's also going to add a program. So what was the example you gave? Or art is fine. So if they're just coming for art on Wednesdays, for example, you can create that program and only take attendance for that program. So it can be as specific or as broad as you would like it. So that also helps with, as I was saying, if you have other report outs that you want to share with other funders, or, you know, specific to different activities. You can say this percentage of students or our attendance rate at our college preparatory programming was this. So you can break it down as detailed as you want for your attendance.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
of
might add,
course.
you know, the absent question is interesting, Shannon, because the system currently, it does allow you to mark them absent, but we're not doing any analysis on absenteeism. And what that means is that if you enroll a bunch of people, but you know they're only going to attend sporadically, the fact that they're absent on a lot of days isn't factored into any of the analysis that we're doing currently. And so, Shannon, this is something for us to talk about. But
Okay.
it does allow you to kind of enroll people and not worry about whether absences are going to be analyzed, because they're not part of the reporting right now.
Okay, we'll follow up with that to improve systems even more. If you are not on mute, if you don't mind going on mute, just because there's some background noise and kind of makes it difficult to hear. Thank you so much. Is it Stacia? Stacia?
Hi, it's Stacia.
Stacia.
Forgive me, I have a little cold, so I sound a little stuffy. My question is about the grants from previous years, because our programming began in September on the prior year's grant, but it's the same students that are in the current year's grant. But I can't access the information for the prior year's grant when I click on it, because our grant for this year's not approved yet. So I'm not sure how I can get into that participant list to be able to add in some of this data that's required for those students. So is that something that we can have access to? So that's the first part. And then the second part of my question was related to being able to sort by grade level for attendance, because we have so many kids in our program. And it's alphabetically sorted right now, the participant list. But if we could like filter that list by grade level, that would make entering attendance easier, since our classes are organized by grade level.
So to the to the second question, Mark, is that something we can do? Do we want to loop back on that, or is it something you can currently do?
It's not available currently, but yes, if we can add a filter here by grade level, if that's going to help just to isolate. So, but we can, you know, I took a note on that one. We'll talk about it.
Okay, me as well. So we'll loop back on that. And then to your first question about being able to access previous year information, you should be able to, if I understand correctly, just go into the cycle instead of FY 23-24 and go to your previous year to see all of the other student data.
It doesn't work. When you try to type in the previous year's cycle, it pulls you back to that home page with like the fields that are being approved for this year's grant. So it won't pull up anything from previous years for whatever reason.
Mark, is that something that we need to take a look at? Is that an error, or do they have to have their current agreement ratified before they can see previous years? I don't think that's the case.
Well, you should be able to click this drop down, go into 22-23, see all of your 22-23 sites, and when you click into them,
maybe I can get help individually later. Maybe it's just a problem I'm having, but I can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Please send a follow-up email.
But you're right. And when you're navigating through your 23-24 grant, you're not going to see all that until it's approved. And so you're right. There's nothing there for you right now until that approval's done. So.
Yeah, you won't be able to pull over the previous year youth until you have ratified your current agreement. However, you should be able to go into your previous year cycle and just view it if you want to access that information. So if you're not able to, please send an email to Learn 24 Data.
I sent an email last week, so I'm just waiting to see if there's any.
Oh, wow. Okay. I apologize for that.
Okay.
And always feel free to copy your grant management specialist, who will also work with the data team to make sure that we're being responsive. So, okay, Melissa. Melissa, are you still there? With SCC?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I actually had some of the same questions that I've been trying to keep up as you all have answered them. The most recent one about not being able to see the participants from the prior years, I just actually clicked inside of the 2022-23, and I see that 310 participants, and that's going back, is showing. So are you saying that we are not, so under the 23-24 profile, we will not have that same option by pulling up all of the participants and just moving them over?
Not by bulk, correct, Mark? You would have to enter their first and last name and then add them as active. So you would have to do it individually, but it will pull over, as you can see here, the lookup participant. You can either add a new or you can just put in first name, last name. We're going to not make date of birth required, but then it'll pull up that student's name and then you can add them along with the additional information that is required for each student. You can then enter it and then submit them.
So if it was entered for that previous year, that's not going to roll over?
It is.
It won't automatically roll over.
Oh, okay.
But
we just have to, go ahead.
Sure, I'll go ahead. So we're going to make this simpler. So we're not going to require date of birth. And in fact, all you'll need to do is type in the first name, hit search. And right now it's saying fill everything out, but you'll get a list of everyone whose first name is John. And next to each one is going to be a register button. And you can just click that register and be done. So we'll make this update quickly. And if you give it a try, I think you'll find that you can bring in a couple hundred prior participants within minutes just using this. Type their first name in, search, hit register, and keep going. So you'll let us know if that's true or not, but I think this is going to be very fast for bringing in people from your prior sites.
Okay.
Just remember, as Mark said earlier, you're registering in, but then you have to go in and put in all that additional, like you make sure their school name is in there, their FERPA consent, everything before you can hit submit, and they will actually show up on your attendance roster, because there are additional data points that are required that were not required in previous years. So they may not be, fully enrolled or submitted until you do that second step.
Okay. So once we have surpassed all of the approvals, so we are one of the sites, like the other sites that mentioned that they have already done their roster for 23, 24, have already submitted that information. And a lot of that, I mean, we've always submitted the demographic information, birth date, pretty much all of those basic fields that were previously there were filled. So is that, so in order to retrieve what we've already done at the beginning of the school year, that's the communication that we would need to speak to someone directly? That email, is that what you're talking about? Send
directly if you
to
can
get
email
that?
Yeah, we're going to support you individually for anyone who already entered it in, but entered it into a previous year. We're going to see Cityspan's going to look into pulling those through a bulk transfer or connection over into 23-24. So if you can send us an email with your program name or your organization program name so that we know to look into that for you.
Okay. And my last question is for the staff module. Our staff module doesn't show any of the clearances or anything. Is that because it's gone through the new system and it needs to be updated again, or you guys are going to put that back in, or what will happen with that?
You should be able to see that. If you are not seeing a rollover of your staff from previous years, including your background clearances, please let us know. Because Mark, that should already have been rolled over, correct?
Yeah, everybody should have this link here for the staff module. And if you don't, then we need to fix your account. But we thought everyone could see this at this point. So.
No, I do see the staff module. It does allow us to see the staff module, but when you go into the staff module, it just shows, actually, one of the names were taken out. I'm not certain why, but for the remaining of the staff is there, but there's no data there's nothing there, just our names, basically. None of our clearances or anything is there. It's all blank.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would suggest you send Len 24 data team an email so we can walk through that with you. Okay.
yeah. I mean, you should have, if you're a prior grantee, you should have been linked to your existing staff. So you see the names, but not the clearances.
There's no clearances listed in there.
All right, yeah, we'll need to look at that. So yeah, we'll look at that together. So
Yeah, send us an email. Send Len24 data at dc.gov. Send us an email. We'll look at that for you. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
And then next question is Bobby. Bobby, are you still there?
Yeah, I mean, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Well, coincidentally, that was actually my question, the one that I believe Miss Melissa just said, because we were actually looking at our staff earlier today. This is Bobby Faison for EE2 and Bob Enterprise too. And we didn't see any clearances for our staff either. So that was actually going to be my question. So we'll send an email and just handle it on a case-by-case basis, correct?
Correct. Anytime you experiencing something that we're saying should be there and you don't see it, or you just can't remember how you were supposed to access something, send an email to learn24data@dc.gov so that we can either jump on the phone and walk through it with you, or provide you the step-by-step details, or reach out to Cityspan in case it needs to be troubleshooted, which it seems to be is the case with this. They'll just need to look and see why that information isn't rolling over so we can get it fixed for all the grantees.
Great. And then my second question, and this is just a reminder thinking about last year. So we have a new program, let's say year-round program, but we are a previous grantee. So and it's at the same location that we had our summer program. So that means we need to create a new program, and I may be using the wrong terminology, but we need to create a new program. Is that correct?
Are do you mean site?
A new site. Thank you. That was the word. Yes. Now, and I don't remember. That was what Learn24. They created the sites for us. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what happens is you entered the site information as a part of your grant application. So now you're able to go in and look at your grant application. And one of the things that you can update is your program sites. If it's the same program site that you put in your application, it will be there visibly. If you need to change it at all, you can change it at this point before you sign your agreement for us to execute it, and then it will roll over all that information into your program site. So as long as you entered it into your application, that information rolls over into the grant agreement and then rolls over into the data management system. You do have the chance to edit your sites before approving your grant agreement. Does that answer your question?
No, it kind of got me confused.
Oh, okay, I apologize.
So we had a summer program at a particular location. We have an after-school program at that same location, but it's the first time that we're introducing an after-school program. So you're saying the after-school program should be indicated in our grant.
Yeah, whatever sites, when you wrote the grant for this year, for FY24, let's forget what your previous sites were, because whether you're new or a returning grantee, whatever you put in your grant application as your sites, that is what will be populated into your grant agreement and into your data management system.
Got you. And then once that's done, then we can add whatever additional information, like the participants for the site and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Of course. That was the last hand raised. And we are at 3:24. Thank you for everyone who has stayed on. We'll give it a couple more minutes if anybody has a pressing question. Otherwise, do know we will be sending out this recording, and you have the email to send us so that we can follow up with you individually to support you. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for the wonderful questions. It really helps us to continuously improve. Mark, thank you so much for the presentation and for staying on to help troubleshoot and answer questions. We appreciate everything Cityspan does.
Yeah, I think Matt is done.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. And like we said, if you have any pressing concerns, contact us at learn24 data@dc.gov, and we will attend to all your needs.
Bye. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye,
you very
Sybil.
much. Thank you.
Hey there. How are you?
Hi, Jerry.
Hey.